Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Just the other day, someone asked me what are my thoughts on the war in Israel between Israel and Hamas or the Palestinians. And I thought to myself that most people don't know the history of what is happening in Israel. So let me give you a little history. Before 1948, there was nothing called Israel. If you look at the world map right now, where you see Israel is, then you're going to see the Gaza Strip, and then you're going to see the West Bank. All of that stretch of land, that area, was called Palestine. And that whole area was colonized by the British in the 1920s. And from the 1920s up until 1947, you had problems with the Jews in Europe. All the people who call themselves Jews in Israel, who call themselves citizens of Israel right now, um, before 1948, most of them, if not all of them, was in Europe. That's where they originated from. And you remember when they had the war, the World War One and World War Two in Europe, where the Jews, Germany, persecuted the Jews. You heard of the Holocaust. And it was after that time, the European Union and the British and the French decided to find a home for the Jews, which was in Europe being persecuted. They was in Europe for hundreds of years and they were being persecuted. So they decided to find a home for them. So during that time, in around 1948, Kenya in Africa, Australia, and Madagascar in Africa, they were deciding whether to find a home for the Jews in Europe to bring them to those places. And then the British was colonized Palestine. So someone came up with a bright idea that why not give them a home, a country inside Palestine. So during that time, Palestine was fighting for their independence from Britain, the same way like in before 1983, that St. Kitts-NEVIS fought for their independence. Palestine was there negotiating for their independence before 1948. And the British decided to give the Jews who were being persecuted in Europe a home in Palestine. And they spoke to the people of Palestine and convinced them to accept them as refugees. So the people of Palestine thought they were accepting these people from Europe, these Jews from Europe, as refugees. So they came in as refugees inside Palestine. And when Palestine thought British is going to give them independence now, they're going to have their free country, just like St. Kitts and Nevis have their independence in 1983. In 1948, a massive, shocking thing happened. The people, the Jews who were being persecuted in Europe, who were there for hundreds of years, who were brought by the British and given a piece of land, an area inside Palestine as refugees. In 1948, they declared that area, a massive area, Israel. They declared it their own country and called it Israel. And then the British and the European Union and America quickly run up and supported them and say, yes, we support you. We recognize you. You are now Israel. And between 1948 up until now, Israel went in, the people, the Jews who came into Palestine as refugees, they began taking different areas, different towns, taking more and more and more land from 1948 up until today. So today now, you only have the little strip called the Gaza Strip and little pieces called the West Bank. that they gave the home to the Palestinians. So the Palestine lost the whole country, and they now give them the Gaza Strip and little bits of area in the West Bank and call it, so that they could call it their home. But it gets worse than that. It gets worse than that. They are allowed to live there, but they're not allowed citizenship. They're not allowed to travel. They're not allowed any services or anything from Israel, but Israel has control of that area still. Israel control the water supply, the electricity, the food coming in and out. They have the Gaza Strip. Israel has the water around there, all the land around there. So it's like an open air prison. It's known as the world's largest open air prison in the world. There's no such thing as that. And let me put this into perspective. Imagine St. Kitts-NEVIS. Let's say we got our independence in St. Kitts-NEVIS in 1983. So in 1980, 1979, 81, 82, we were negotiating with the British for our independence. Let's say that during that time, the British decided to give the Jews, let's say, Gingerland in Nevis and Keon in St. Kitts. They decided to welcome them as refugees, and they are allowed to stay there. And just before we get independence in St. Kitts and Nevis in 1983, those refugees declared the area that we gave them their home, their country. So they declared Keon in St. Kitts their own country and call it Israel, and they declared Gingerland in Nevis their own country and call it their home, their country, Israel. And then Europe and America quickly come behind and support them and say, yes, we recognize you, you are now a country. And then from 1948 up until today, let's say, and what is happening 1983 up until today, they now take St. John's in Nevis, they take St. Thomas's, they take all the areas in St. James, and they chase all the people from those areas and say, you are only allowed to stay in Charlestown in Nevis. You are allowed to stay in Charlestown. And they build a massive wall around Charlestown and say, you're only allowed to stay there. You're not allowed to go in on the beach and travel abroad. You're not allowed to come into Gingerland in those areas there. You're not allowed citizenship, but we will supply your food and water, and you could stay there and live. And let's say in St. Kitts, remember I told you they got Keon. Let's say in St. Kitts, they took St. Paul's, they took other areas of St. Kitts, they took Bastille, they took Tabernacle, they took all areas of St. Kitts, and then they say, okay, we're gonna give you a little stretch of land not the whole of Bastille, we're gonna give you a little stretch of land close to the sea in Bastille, and you're allowed to stay there. And they fence it around with wall, and they control your water, your electricity, and they say you're not allowed to go on the beach, but you're allowed to stay there and live. And they control the whole country, St. Kitts and Nevis. And we the people are now only can stay in a small area in Gingerland and a small area in Bastille with no citizenship. That is exactly what happened to the Palestine. So I am amazed that people here would support Israel. It's either that they don't know what happened or they don't care. Because the Jews that now occupy Israel and call it their home, they are not even Christians. They don't believe in Christianity. They don't recognize the New Testament of the Bible. They don't recognize that. They have their own religion called Judaism. I think that's the name. That's their religion. So the people here are Christian people, and they support most of them are supporting Israel, thinking that they are sent by God, the Holy One, when in fact they took that place. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, all those places in the Bible was known as Palestine. The Jews was in Europe. Them time is only up to 1948, after Hitler persecuted them. Remember I said that they came back to brought to Palestine and name the whole of Palestine Israel, and send the Palestine in the West Bank and on the Gaza Strip. So that is something like apartheid that took place in America and South Africa. Worse than that, and it's worse than slavery as well, because Israel is constantly bombing for years now, since 1967, bombing schools, bombing hospital, bombing residential areas, and taking more and more land and towns. And the Palestine got fed up of it. So a group was created, came from nowhere. Not even the Palestine government or nothing like that. Remember, they're not allowed their own state. They're not recognized as their own state. So a group came called Hamas and started attacking Israel. And up until today, they attacked Israel the other day, which was known as Palestine before 1948. So Israel is now in a war with Hamas, not the people of Palestine, not the Palestine government, because the people of Palestine, they don't have anything. They're just allowed to live there. They don't have a military. They don't have an international airport, nothing like that. Israel has them surrounded, and Israel called the whole area Israel, but they allow them to live in that area, and they're not even granting them the benefits of what Israel citizens get, because they're not considered Israel citizens. So they're like slaves in their own land. So what Palestine is calling for is that they're calling for their own country, and they want it to be called Palestine, so that they can have their own country. They can be able to travel, they can control their own affairs. That is all they're asking for. So there is this system that some groups of world organizations was trying to solve this problem between Israel and the Palestine and create a two-state country. One is Israel, one is Palestine. I suggest a 50-50 split, or a split based on population, where Israel will get a piece of the area based on their population, and Palestine will get another piece of their area based on their population, and then the problem can be solved. But Israel don't want that. Israel want to keep the Palestine how they are on the Gaza Strip and little bits of pieces in the West Bank. But they're not happy. They're going into the West Bank. They're taking land all the time. And as you can see, they're now sending in ground troops into the Gaza Strip. And my thing is, what I think they're gonna do, they're gonna try to take over the whole of the Gaza Strip and maybe kill as much of them as possible and wipe out all of them and declare everything totally Israel. That is what I think they're trying to do. But I call on the international community. Let us have a two-party state, or two countries in that area, Palestine and Israel. Israel not supposed to be there. The Jews not supposed to be there. But since they've been there for generations, since 1948, people would have born there. I say, let's give them their own country there, and let's give Palestine, who are the original people there, their own country that they deserve. If you look at in the Old Testament, you will see Palestine. No such thing as Israel. Israel was just created in 1948. after the Second World War, to give the Jews in Europe who were being persecuted a home. And then they came as refugees and take over everything. And that is why I thought I would come here today and share this message with you. Thanks for listening me, and subscribe to my channel, like it, share it, and I'll see you again in the next video. Oh, and from time to time, I will come here and speak about international matters of national interest. And the reason why also the governments in the Caribbean are afraid to come out to support Palestine is, even though they should, is because they're afraid of sanctions from the European Union and the Americans, because the Americans and Europe support Israel, because Israel, the Jews, are their people. They came from Europe, so of course they're going to support them. So the reason why Caribbean leaders are afraid, they're afraid retribution, sanctions from Europe and America. Just like the citizens, as I said in my video, gone there, citizens are afraid to speak against the government because they're afraid of financial sanctions. The government control mostly everything, so they won't speak. It's the same way our governments in the Caribbean are afraid to speak up. They are afraid of Europe and America. But I say, fear not. Mother Africa is there. Many African countries support Palestine. Let us join with Africa and support the Palestinians. Freedom for Palestinians, freedom for the Palestinians. I am sending my message from the Eastern Caribbean of St. Kitts and Nevis, and you have support down here. You have support down here from the people, and much love to the Palestine. Israel, we call on you to stop the attack on the Palestinians and give the people, the rural people, the owners of the land, freedom, freedom, freedom. Much love. Subscribe today, like, share this video, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.